I'm Cindy from bdancewear.com, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make a reversible sleepover bag. It's a great gift. I like to put presents inside here for my favorite little dancers, and I also like to use it for my sister-in-law. She loves gifts like this. It's reversible, it's beautiful, and it fits tons of stuff. For this project, I've cut several pieces. Because it's a reversible bag, we need lots of colors and different pieces. I've picked colors that all go together. So for the straps, those I have cut at 34 inches long, and then they are 5 inches wide. You need 2 of these straps. For the top band, I've cut 2 pieces that are the width of the fabric, which is 45 inches in this case, and they are 6 inches tall. So you'll need 2 of those. And then the actual bag fabric, I have cut 2 different corresponding fabrics, or I should say coordinating fabrics that look good together in my opinion. You'll want to watch if there's a pattern, what's going to be the top or the bottom, if it matters which direction it goes. In the chevron pattern, doesn't really matter. And that is, 2 of those are 23 inches long, and then the width of the fabric, which is 45 inches. Let's get this out of the way. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to set this on my lap. We're going to go with the chevron pattern. We're going to turn it inside out. I want this bag to be a very big bag, so it's a nice size utility bag. We're going to go ahead on the one side, sew it together. You can pin it if you're not comfortable with your sewing skills, but you want to make sure both pieces are together. And if there's little perforated dots from where the fabric was made, make sure and go past those. So you want to back stitch and then sew up that side. And then make sure and backstitch. Now I like, you could do no seam on one side and a seam on the other, but I like it to be even so that it looks as if it was cut, but I don't always like to cut it. It's a little bit stronger not cut. So I'm just going to sew completely flat this edge here. And then you just keep going. And make sure and backstitch in all the right spots. Now this is the bottom part here. I'm going to go ahead and sew a nice thick seam on that. Make sure and backstitch. Remember, this is going to be the bottom part of the bag. And you keep going. You can always reinforce it with extra stitches. So now I'm going to need the scissors. Awkward. And we're going to cut that edge on both sides. And we want a gusset in the bottom of the bag. So now I'm going to line up this seam on the side and the bottom seam right here. Now you'll want to make sure this is even. I want a nice big gusset. So I'm going to measure down and measure so it's at 4 inches right there and there. Now, it's a good idea to mark it. I'm going to mark it with a Sharpie so that you can see it. You might want to pin this, fold these spots open, make sure that this is in the center. I'm going to go 4 inches. I have a measuring guide on the very front of my machine, which makes it easy. So this is so you can see right here. That's 4 inches, 2 inches to the center, 2 inches to the other side. Now, if you're more comfortable pinning, if you're a new sewer, make sure and pin that. And then I'm just going to go over that and make sure really backstitch nice at the edge. And then there we go. So that creates a gusset in the bag, in the bottom. Now, that's a 4-inch one. You can go a little bit wider if you like. Let's show you what a 6-inch one is like. It'll make it nice and wide at the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and do, for this particular bag, I'm going to like the 6 inches. because I just want it to be a big, beefy, fat bag just to throw stuff in, like in your trunk, whatever. And most important thing is this back, the side seam, and the bottom seam line up when you do that. And if you mark it, don't mark it with a permanent marker unless that mark is inside. So now we're going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to line up those seams, make sure and open them up. If you're a beginner, it might be easier to pin this at this point. But so now I can just take this part of the bag and line it up. I'm going to use the Sharpie just so you can see, but normally I would not use a Sharpie for this. And then put a dot there. So if you're new to sewing, you'll want to pin right here and then pin at these dots and maybe even in between. So I'm going to go ahead and sew over them, making sure you're keeping these folds open. You want that line also to be a very straight line. So let me flip it inside out so you can see. Really simple to see. So there's the gusset in the bag. Now, if you just want to make a quick, simple bag from some scrap fabric to wrap things in, this is a perfect thing. You can just bunch it up here, keep the project in. But I want this to be something they're going to use over and over. So I like to reinforce these corners so they don't rip open. I like to take that gusset and just tack it into place down here. So I'm sewing the point to this where it's opened up. So it keeps that corner nice and crisp, nice and strong, nice and flat. You can trim it away if you feel like it's too much bulk in there. Let's do this on this side too. Oh, broke a needle. Now, the next thing I'm going to do after I fix this needle is I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to the inside fabric. The next part, I'm going to sew the straps. So you'll want to put the right sides together. The easiest way to tell, sometimes if you can't tell on the color, you can look at the dots, the perforations, and you can feel what's the front and the back there. So I'm going to fold that in half. Now, I'm going to go to the end and I'm going to really backstitch and make sure that's secure because I'm going to show you a little trick now. And I'm using the pink thread instead of gray. Normally you want to use a thread that blends, but this way you can see the stitch. And then make sure and backstitch here. Get that spot nice and strong. And just sew all the way down. Remember, this will be the handle, so it's really important that you have the stitching tight enough. And then backstitch at the end. Now I'm going to show you a really easy trick. Because of the thickness of this, I'm going to cut the little edges just to make it easier to fold in. But you want to find an object, and in this case, the yardstick. It's a lot bigger of a sewing area than the yardstick. So if it was the same, you'd want to find something a lot smaller, like some sort of a small stick or something like that. So I'm going to take this yardstick, I'm going to secure it with my feet. I'm going to take this little area here. Let's trim out the really long threads. And then I'm going to squish some of that in there. Just use my finger and squish it in. Then I'm going to poke it down onto here. Now I've sewed that in tight and shut, but you still want to go slow. And you want to just guide it down and keep going. And then once the correct side is exposed, pull it off. And there you go. That makes it really easy to do. Then I cut that end open. I allowed for that when I figured out how long I needed everything to be, because this is going to be inside of the top piece. So I want to make sure that it's nice and even and flat. So there's a couple choices. You can flatten it out like this and do some top stitching if you want, or you can have this edge exposed so that when you put that handle in, maybe not a bad idea to reinforce the stitching. So you can stitch along this top edge and this bottom edge just to make it look even. So there's that. Now we're going to go ahead and do the top piece. Make sure those sides are together. Now there's two top pieces. Make sure and backstitch. And to line up with the bag, I'm going to go ahead and also do the same amount I went on the bag part itself. Here, backstitching. Now we got to do the inside one, because remember this bag is reversible. So it's important that the inside look as good as the outside. Backstitch. And then go to the other side. Now it's important to trim up all the threads, but for sake of speed time and showing you, I'm not going to do that. Now, we want to mark where these straps are going to go. I'm going to guess, I think that that's a nice look. So let's pin it and see what we think. Okay. We want to make sure it's even. I always like to go visually, and so that will put us at, it'll start, let's go a little bit closer because part of this will be the gusseted side. So let's say 6.5 in. No, so we're going to have to go from this side. 6.5 inches in. And the way I found it best to keep things always the same, if you fold it in half and mark the same exact spot where that side is, make sure that this edge is right there. I like to go up a little bit, have some extra room. That way it gives me room to really sew it in and make it strong. And then you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Now that we have all these pieces sewn together, once we've done this, I'm going to show you how to put the entire thing together. So in the previous video, I showed you how to cut it. Now I'm going to show you how to sew it. I took it apart because one of the videos didn't come out. So excuse all the threads, but basically, where we pinned those straps, you'll want to go in and sew them down securely. See the straps here? We've already had them pinned, so we're going to sew them in there. I like to zigzag in a spot you don't see. You don't want to zigzag at the top, but that way, once you sew the top piece in, this thing is not going to rip out. So just sew them in securely, and then the next step I did was I took the gray top piece, put one to the front and one to the back right here. I sewed down the sides so that it's closed up, and then I took it on here and I sewed this strip down, as you can see, so that when you take this apart, this would be how the bag would look without, obviously the top part's not finished off, but this would be the front with the handles. So now we're going to take that bag, and we've done the same thing with an inside bag, so that way we can switch colors. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put one inside the other. Let's see, you got to have the correct sides, the right sides facing each other. And then we're going to line up the side seams. And then we're going to go ahead. Now, in this, I have a little hole in this side seam so that I can go in and close it up when we're all done. You can do it in the bottom or in the side. Let's just set this here for a second. That'll help hold it into place while I get this all. Got to make sure everything is tucked inside. And you'll definitely want to pin this to make sure that it doesn't move around or anything like that. And then make sure side seams match up. Side seams right here matching up. definitely pin it where the straps are. They'll want to pull in while you're working on it. So just pin all these places all the way around. Oops, this handle has to go inside. And then let's go ahead and sew it. I want a straight stitch. And I'm gonna make it really big just to make this fast. Just to show you, but you won't want to do it fast. You'll want to make sure it's a nice, clean, straight line. If you mess up a little, when you flip it around, nobody will notice, so it's okay. I like the hole to be on the inside, not the outside or the top. You can do it in the top if you'd like, and then you just top stitch it. I'll show you that real quick. You would use the same idea on the side seam. So what I'm going to do on this one, I'm going to back stitch a little, and then so I'm going to show you on the top how you would do it, and then I'll show you on if you want to have it on the inside. Then so you skip a space so you could pull it through, and just sew that whole thing all the way around. Go back to exactly where you started from. And I think I've reached there. Okay. Now, this hole right here that I left, and like I said, you can do it on a side seam. I'm going to show you on the front, on the top, because it'll just be easier to understand. You're going to twist that whole bag inside out. Now, this bag I've made reversible, so that's why we have all the layers. Let's get this out. Good to have that small hole for finishing off, but sometimes for turning, not so good. So let's keep turning it through, turning it. There we go. And then let's pull this bag inside. Excuse me. Let's pull the straps out. So in this case, I'm going to do a top stitch all the way around, and so what'll happen is when I get to this space that I had opened, let's open that up just a little bit more because the strap got caught. I'm going to clean out all these threads before I sew it. But what I'm going to do then is I'm going to put it on my machine. Cut that out, Adrian, okay? I'm going to use my presser foot right here as a guide, and then what I will do is I will sew all the way around evenly, and I'll flip it around so you can see what I mean, and I'll finish the whole thing later, but just so you see, so see how it has a nice even stitch around it. Something though I like to do is go back in and right at the very top so that you don't end up with like a gap here. I will also sew a second stitch here. So let me show you on this side with the blue. So one here and one at the very, very top, just before it hits the edge, so that it appears as if you've sewed the whole thing all the way around without any gaps. And it'll give it some nice decorative stitching. This is definitely the, before you sew it together, if you want to embroider a name or something on this top part or anywhere else, do it before you sew it together because it'll make it a lot easier to get that embroidered. So that is how you sew the bag together. Thank you for watching our video, and if you enjoyed it, make sure and click here to subscribe because we're going to have some amazing DIY videos coming out. And if you want to get our free complete dance costume DIY guide, click right here or go to bdancewear.com/DIY guide. And lastly, if you have any questions or ideas for future videos, please leave it in the comments below. Thanks again for watching our video. And remember, be original, be colorful, be dancewear.com.